This is good timing. Hello, everybody. Thank you and welcome to this 149th session of the International IVF Initiative I3. Today, we are discussing sustainability in IVF, and we do so in a moment when global progress toward environmental responsibility and sustainability faces new challenges. Recent policy shifts, particularly in the United States, have rolled back critical environmental protections and given renewed support to the fossil fuel industry, placing our collective future at greater risk. Yet, despite these challenges and setbacks, this moment also highlights the profound power we have as individuals and as a global community to counteract these regressive policies. Each action that we take, whether large or small, contributes meaningfully to the sustainability of our planet. Together, through awareness, innovation, and commitment, we can and will make a lasting difference. Our shared future depends on the choices that we make today. So the time to act is now. And today we have three wonderful speakers to tell us how. We will keep the introductions short, but full bios of all the speakers and moderators can be found on the I3 website. My name is Mina Alikani, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Anna Gorbunova, who was a co-author on the first comprehensive review paper on sustainability in the context of IVF lab practice, which was published in RBMO last year. Anna is a clinical embryologist working in Russia and Canada. Her passion for sustainability has led her to complete a professional course in corporate sustainability and climate communication. At the Ottawa Fertility Center, Anna has developed the clinic's sustainability strategy and actively contributes to the Green Team, working to reduce the environmental footprint of their treatments at the center. In 2024, she presented research on patient interest in sustainable practices at the CFAS annual meeting, and she remains committed to promoting sustainable healthcare within the fertility sector. Anna, it's great to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, and thank you very much, Mina, for your introduction. Yes, it's an honor to introduce our esteemed co-chairs, Dr. Mina Alikani and Dr. Jacques Cohen, two pioneers in the field of assisted reproduction, but also passionate about green issues for many years. Dr. Mina Alikani is a distinguished clinical consultant and scientist, recognized globally for her contributions to embryology and laboratory science. She has authored numerous publications, serves as an editor for Reproductive Biomedicine Online, and leads scientific initiatives at Conceivable Life Sciences. As president of Alpha Scientists in Reproductive Medicine, she continues to shape the future of the field. Dr. Jacques Cohen is a world-renowned reproductive biologist and innovator in IVF technology. With a career spanning decades, from his early work with IVF pioneers to founding groundbreaking companies in AI and reproductive diagnostics, he has been instrumental in advancing assisted reproduction. A prolific author and editor, he has also been a driving force behind key scientific organizations, including Alpha and PGDIS. Together, they bring unparalleled expertise and vision to this event.
Thank you, Anna, for this kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here this evening or this afternoon with you in what promises to be an enlightening webinar and one that is very much needed. We have talked about green IVF before, and today we're taking action. So let's see what is in store for us. If you have questions, and we hope you do, please put those in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. If you are chatting in the chat room, you can chat as much as you like, but don't put any questions there. Put them all in the Q&A section. Our first speaker today is our own Fran Farlie. She is a leader in green IVF and the greening of IVF, has been on the forefront of this. The moment she started, she's an embryologist with Concept Fertility in London, where she started her career as a reproductive science practitioner, and that was in 2020. She completed her bachelor's degree in anatomy, developmental and human biology at King's College London, where she was awarded the Hamilton Prize for the highest graduating student, not a surprise, followed by her master's degree in human clinical embryology and assisted conception at the University of Dundee in Scotland. Fran was made the Green Ambassador of her clinic and set up the first Concept Fertility Green Committee. She has since presented at the ARCS Summer Symposium, Fertility UK, ASHRE, Alpha, and also here at I3. Fran, you are there. You have your slides up, and now you're muted, so you're all ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques, and thank you, I3, for inviting me here to talk today. Normally, I'm behind the scenes for these webinars, so it's a little bit different to be having my microphone on and camera out, but let's have a go. So I have nothing to disclose. I would, however, like to make everyone aware that green IVF is a registered name by I3. So by all means, talk about all the great things that you have learned from today in the session, but just be cautious using the phrase green IVF in your material. So a few years ago, sustainability in the lab was pretty much unheard of, maybe spoken about amongst colleagues, but certainly not publicly available in the literature. Now, as we've mentioned in the intros, that's all changed just over a year ago when our BMO published this paper, and you'll notice some of the co-authors are here with me tonight, which is great to have them back. The paper isn't stuck behind a paywall or anything like that because we felt the content was too important to keep restricted. So if you haven't had a look, take a look at that. But that paper was all about putting out sort of early information specific to sustainability in the IVF lab. But the survey that I'm going to talk about today, that kind of follows on from this paper, and it's more about understanding the views that ART professionals have regarding sustainability. What are they doing in the lab and what are they not doing? And how can we support everyone in our field to be more sustainable going forward? So we followed pretty standard survey protocol. We first had to come up with the list of questions that we wanted the answers to. And we tried to cover various different aspects of sustainability that we as reproductive scientists might face. We received a waiver for ethical approval. The nature of the survey didn't require anything more, and we used the company that ensured participants' data was securely protected. So then once we had all that, we went live. The survey was available for 10 weeks. I hope some of you took part in it, and it was available all over the world and spread out through social media. And then, of course, once the survey closed, we collected all the results and we had a look for any statistical analysis. So who did we reach? We had 893 people respond, of which 139 were excluded early on. And that's because one of the first questions was, do you identify as a professional clinical scientist working within a clinical ART laboratory? So if you are unable to identify with that, then you weren't the right fit for this survey. And that left us with 754 eligible responses. So there were more than double the amount of women than men in the study, but anecdotally that seems to be reflective of the field in general. And comparing results to other surveys that had assessed ART professionals, it was kind of in line, so we weren't too concerned about the differences there. The age of our participants followed a normal distribution following the Anderson-Darling test. And then when we asked participants how much time they spent in the lab for their working hours, more than 80% said they spent most of their hours within the laboratory. So we started to feel confident that we had reached the right people for the survey. When we asked about job roles, the most common response you can see here was senior practitioners, with nearly 30% of the responses. And that was followed by lab directors and lab managers. The junior positions, or the early career positions, made up less than 20% of the total responses. So the juniors, the trainees, and the technicians. I personally would have liked to have seen a few more of the less experienced views, but that's fine, we'll take what we're given. But I think that's what you can see reflected in the years of experience. So we had over half of the participants with more than 12 years experience, and those proportions decreased with less years. But again, we felt like we were asking the right questions to people who understood our field. So the participants came from all over the world, spanning 6 continents and 83 countries. Now, of course, some countries were more heavily represented than others, but the top 5 were the US, Australia, the UK, India, and Italy. But again, we were happy that we'd had a good enough spread that we could get an idea of different global perspectives. But what were the questions that we asked? Well, we started with questions asking participants for their views and understandings regarding things related to green IVF and sustainability. So the first question we asked was, how familiar are you with the term sustainability? And what you can see is quite positively found that over 90% of responses were either very familiar or slightly familiar with the term, which is good. But if you were unsure, then the United Nations defines sustainability as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that tends to be broken down into social, economic, and environmental. We then asked, how concerned are you about the environmental impact of the medical field? And here you can see that over half of the people were very concerned, and more than a third were slightly concerned. And if we compare that to the previous question, the response proportions are quite similar. But what I think it shows is that this is certainly a worthy topic for I3 discussion if this many people are concerned. We then asked, how important do you think it is for the ART field to work sustainably? And we gave a few examples of what that would mean. Again, you can see that over 90% of the responses said that ART specifically should be working sustainably. But what you can see is in this example, there was much more of a positive shift towards people saying very important compared to just slightly important and very important. So I think if you thought that you were alone in your views, in your concerns regarding our field and sustainability, then you are not alone. there are a lot of people that are concerned, and you are currently in a webinar surrounded by several hundred people who are probably also thinking the same thing. So you are not alone. We then looked at green culture, and in our BMO recommendations paper, we had a whole section on building a global culture of sustainability in IVF. Now, at the end of each section, we had a list of bullet points or sort of recommendations and action points for each section. So with this survey, we wanted to see how well were some of these action points received, and how much progress do we still need to make in order to build a green culture in our field. So we asked, does your place of work have a green team or a group of staff who meet to address sustainability issues in the workplace? Now, there were a few skeptics. We had 10% of participants not interested in green teams whatsoever, but that's fine, they're allowed their opinions. But the majority of people said that they do not currently have a green team, but they are quite open to have one in their own place of work. Green teams were operational in nearly a quarter of cases. However, only 65% of those green teams seem to be effective. So this number was a little bit disheartening for me. I would have liked it to have been a few more effective teams, but perhaps it's unsurprising given that there is very little evidence, very little material out there that's specific to our unique conditions. So we thought about this when we were writing the questions for the survey, and we followed up with, would you consider participating in a green or sustainable alliance with IVF labs? So in the same way that we share our best success rates for culture environments or standard warming versus ultra rapid warming, why not share our tips and tricks for sustainability in the lab? So these were the results. We found that over 80% of participants were interested in sharing their results to some degree, whether it be strongly interested or slightly interested. Of the 115 people that had previously said that they had a green team and it was effective, almost all of them were interested in sharing their ideas with others. And I think that's really going to help improve those green teams that are currently underperforming, but also help support those that are wanting to start a green team, so that if we can share our ideas, then we'll have a bit more idea of what we can do in the lab. There was no correlation between years of lab experience and whether they were considering joining a green alliance or not. So this wasn't just a younger generation push towards being more green, but something quite unanimously supported amongst the field. Speaking of support, following on from green culture, we also asked questions about support from stakeholders involved in ART. So we asked, how far do you agree or disagree that societies and governing bodies, ART suppliers, and your own clinic management, how far did they help you be practicing sustainability in the lab? And I'm just suffering from a bit of a cough, so just give me a second. Oh, much better. So when comparing these three stakeholders, you can see that own clinic management had the most positive responses. It was 28.4% of people that said that they strongly agree, and that's equivalent to 214 people. And it was the same amount of people who said that they slightly agree. But with these questions, we started to look at global differences. And to do that, we only looked at the top 10 countries because they were the countries that had the most responses, and that we were able to compare different countries, because I couldn't really compare a country that only had one person representing them, because it would be 100% of one answer. So we looked at the top 10. And when we did that, you can see that Nigeria had the highest proportion of participants who believed that clinic management encouraged sustainability to some degree, with over 85%. And Mexico and India also scored highly in this category. Germany had significantly lower proportion of participants who felt that they were supported by their clinic management. Absolutely no one working in Germany said that they strongly agreed, and only a quarter of the people chose slightly agree. Instead, Germany ranked first in the top 10 countries for people who voted either slightly or strongly disagree, and that was followed by the UK, the US, and Australia. Interestingly, although not significant, we did see as years of experience increased, the agreement with clinic management supporting sustainable practice declined. So those who voted strongly agree tended to be less experienced, while those who voted strongly disagree tend to be more experienced. But this is where having a larger cohort of junior practitioners or positions would have been nice to have had, just to see if that trend was actually there or if it was just low numbers. Moving on to societies and governing bodies, the data showed the most neutral responses regarding feelings supporting the sustainable practice. From the top 10 countries, 7 of them had neither agree nor disagree as their primary response. But if we look specifically at countries, then Mexico and Nigeria showed the highest proportion of feeling strong support from their societies or governing bodies. And the United Kingdom gave the highest proportion of practitioners with strong disagreement of feeling support from their governing body. So while we have the HFEA, who love to control absolutely everything we do in the lab, UK working practitioners are feeling slightly not thought of or not supported when it comes to sustainability from the HFEA. Finally, we asked about ART suppliers, and while a quarter of people did feel that they strongly agreed to be supported to be sustainable, it was the stakeholder with the highest proportion of people that said that they strongly disagree with being sustainable. Now, as part of this survey, we also had a section talking about how regular certain actions take place in the lab. And for this talk, I haven't even barely touched on it just because there's so many questions and so little time to discuss it all. But the most underperformed action was feedbacking to suppliers when there was excessive packaging. So less than 10% of participants always fed back to suppliers, and more than a third had never spoke about it. So I think this really highlights how important communication is, and that we talk to our suppliers regularly when we think that there's a problem. So this is my favorite question. We rounded off the section with who participants thought was the most responsible in creating a greener culture in ART. Now, this was the list they were given. And if you didn't take part in the survey, just think about how you would rank them from most important to least important. And I'll give you the results in just a second. So, drum roll, please. The first place was ART suppliers. Over half of the participants had ART suppliers either in rank 1 or rank 2. So overall, they came first. Second was clinic management. Practitioners from Brazil and Greece mostly voted clinic management as their top priority for creating a greener culture. So if you are a clinic manager from one of those countries, maybe take note. Third was clinic staff. The ranks, or the number of votes in each rank, was fairly even throughout for clinic staff. So overall, it kind of averaged in third place. Fourth was governing bodies. Although this one was the most interesting, as it showed a bit of a binomial distribution. So the intermediate ranks were less voted for, and more votes either went for rank 1, which is most responsible, or rank 5, which was least responsible. If I had to hazard a guess, I would probably say it's because some countries are more heavily regulated than others, so some may have thought it was more important, but that's just my own little take on that. But specific countries were Italy had the highest proportion of people voting for governing bodies as rank 1, and that was followed by Greece, India, Canada, and the UK. So no prizes for who came last, because it's quite obvious now, but professional societies received the most votes in rank 4 or rank 5. But while they're thought to be the least responsible in creating a greener culture in this list, it doesn't mean that they are not responsible at all. So they should still be doing their part to encourage sustainability in the field. So that takes me on to green challenges, and I'll try to be quick because I really want to hear what the other speakers have to say. But the final question of the survey was an optional free text, say what you want kind of question. And it was, what would you find most useful for you to be more sustainable in the IVF lab? So we wanted to know how we could best help the field to work towards a more sustainable workplace. So as I said, this was an optional question, but we had 401 people comment, which took a while to go through them all. And actually, Anna did a great job at that. But I summarized a few of the answers here. So in general, support was a common theme, and that's from all the stakeholders, management, lab directors, investing in greener choices. In general, support was very important. Education and information was regularly commented on. Of course, we want to know that the green actions that we think we're taking are in fact green and they're having the impact that we want them to have. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we're not affecting patient outcomes, because the patients come first no matter what. And that's where I think that the guidelines, the training, the information, the certifications, that can really help to improve our understanding and encourage more green change. And then I wonder if you can guess what was the screaming comments, but there was a huge cry for how our products are packaged, how they're shipped, what bits can be put into which waste stream. And I think it's probably because it's the most visual waste we have that we see on a daily basis. And at the moment, we can't really do anything about it. So if you're on setup and it's quite a big day the next day, you're going to have a table full of plastic and you can't help it. You still need to use those dishes. So those were some of the things that people were hoping would help them be more sustainable. So overall, hopefully the results of this survey have shown that we as a field are concerned about our environmental impact of our work. So going forward, I want you to think of 3 things. The first is communication. If you see a green problem, speak up about it. Talk to your manager, talk to the supplier, talk to your governing body. Let them know that you think there could be a green improvement. Share your ideas and projects that you have been successful with and encourage others to do the same. And I'm hoping Sami's going to do that right after me. So again, looking forward to that. But I would also urge suppliers here to be more transparent about their sustainable plans. And that's why I'm super excited to see what Vitrolife or the Vitrolife group have to say in the end of the session, because I'm sure the participants here are very familiar with Vitrolife products, but probably not so much about what's going on behind the scenes. So stay tuned because I'm excited. Support was a big theme that ran throughout the survey, whether that be seniors in the workplace or encouragement with incentives, or even just providing funding so that we can do that research. Because let's face it, we're all embryologists. We like data, we like numbers. Help fund us do the research so we know what is having the biggest green impact in our daily lives. And then finally, just take action. If you want a green team, go ahead and make one. Even just the smallest action is a step in the right direction, as Mina said earlier. And then we can just continue to build on it until sustainability in the lab is just a normal practice. Thanks.
Thank you, Fran. Wonderful presentation, no surprise. So now you can give, for a few minutes, you can give your, or maybe a few seconds, you can give your throat a break. but there are questions for you. I will only ask you one. There were interesting observations here. Lots of good news and then some not so good news. I noticed that it's coming from the top down, the information or the initiative, which is interesting. That may change. And of course, in a survey, you always have to be, you always have to consider that it's not representative necessarily. And therefore, it's important to repeat this. There's maybe more questions or different questions in the future. The German answers really surprised me because going back 10 years ago, Germany was a leader in sustainability in Europe. So I don't know if this is really representative or there's something else going on here. So my question that I found in the list of questions that was asked to you already is there a way that IVF clinics can share their green ideas, or are we siloed? I don't know who asked the question, but it's an important question. How do we communicate? Because if we exchange information properly, then we will move faster. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think this is what we're missing. Obviously, we have talks later about what people are doing. I often see LinkedIn posts about what a clinic's done, and it like inspires me to want to try and do it in my lab. But I think we're missing somewhere that we can just all put our ideas together. And the response from the survey seemed to be that we have people interested in it, and we just need to make it, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. You can take a break now. We'll see you back at the Q&A, right? Don't go away. We'll see you back. My pleasure to introduce the second speaker from Norway, Sami Obaya. Sami is a clinical embryologist with international experience in IVF. He specializes in lab optimization, efficiency, and innovation, tackling complex challenges to improve workflows and patient outcomes. He's based at the Alaris Healthy Clinic in Oslo, in Norway, and he combines technical expertise with a strategic mindset, actively engaging with the art community to drive progress. And he says that very clearly in his resume, always with a good sense of humor. And I think that is essential to get to this status that we want to be, where we want to be in green IVF. So Sami, we're looking very much forward to your presentation and the presentation that will center around your clinic in Norway.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me? Yes, beautiful. All right. So thank you so much for the introduction, Jacques. Really appreciate it. And I just wanted to say, Fran, it was a really cool Really cool presentation. I think our team, we feel very represented by what you just presented. And I'm basically going to share a bit, I think, what you just put in a more scientific way towards on our side, or a way, maybe a more operational way, and how we are trying to do this really great this great responsibility that we have on our shoulders, which is on top of helping creating families on our day-to-day life, perhaps also ensuring a place where these families can thrive as well. So I think that's going to be exciting. So I just want to share a little bit of ourselves and what we do in Norway. So I just want to start with just a presentation about myself. I'm a clinical embryologist. I have a background in biochemistry. Sorry, let me share. I don't know what happened. Okay. Let me reshare again. Technical problems of the life. There we go again.
No worries. Yeah, see it.
Perfect. So I just wanted to say that I have no conflicts of interest. I have, as you mentioned, international experience, and my focus and our team in general is trying to optimize and see what can we do about our day-to-day life that we can actually have, even though being small, that can have an impact. So I want to talk to begin with about our clinic. It's Aleris. It's a leading specialized healthcare in Scandinavia. It's one of the largest private healthcare providers. We have a lot of patients coming through our doors, over 2 million patients annually across different countries. We have both in Norway as well as Sweden and Denmark. So it's quite a big clinic where we are dealing with a lot of patients and the subsequent waste that comes from for that. When it comes to the fertility department, we are fairly new. We've been there for like almost 1.5 years now. Even though the Aleris Denmark also has a fertility clinic, but it's two different institutions. So our institution, which is Aleris, it's quite focused already in from the management above, already very conscious on the sustainability, and we do have certification, which is the ISO 14001, which is a really nice certification to have. It's quite difficult to achieve because it's quite strict for all the requirements needed, which among them is reducing an energy use in a specific percentage every year, a specific amount of waste and CO2 emissions reductions, as well as trying to figure out and implement digital solutions to both enhance efficiency and minimize travel, being through patients or medias or any kind of delivery. So trying also to implement the use of electrical vehicles and for example. So I wanted to start talking about a little bit about the Norwegian sustainability, perhaps should say paradox. So Norway, it's on the front of sustainability. It has been for quite some years now. It is very if you are in Norway, in Oslo in general, you will see sustainability, how it has a big impact in society. Around 80% of new cars being sold in Norway are electric. I would say above 90% of public transport is electric. Around 100% of the electrical production for domestic use is from sustainable sources. So that is really cool to see. There is a big focus on sustainability. On the other hand, Norway also has a bit of a paradox here, which is the grand transition is funded by revenues from industries that they are actually maybe not that green, which is, for example, oil and gas. At the end of the day, you need the funding in order for you to transition to new technologies. You need to do the research and development. You need to find out what works, what doesn't work. So it's not a very straightforward path. So I think that even though we are very green, I think it's important to look where we're coming from and where is this funding coming from. I think it's always nice to not be blinded by the success, but also remember where we're coming from. So the question here is, can we truly achieve sustainability, or are we just offsetting our footprint? I think this is a good question. However, it's a big question, and big questions usually lead to a bit of a freeze on action, because it's too much to do in order for you to actually do something or feel that you're doing something. So then ourselves working daily in the IVF lab, why is this important? Well, as Fran mentioned, if you have a busy day, you will see the bench full of plastic, actually a lot of plastic. So I think it's a question that inherently comes when you're preparing. It's like, oh my God, this is a lot of waste that we're throwing away. So I think it's really important that that since we are working in IVF and healthcare, and specifically in IVF, we have a very large footprint. At the end of the day, we need to use single-use plastic. We need to use disposable material, and we need incubators that have and benchtops that they are running a very specific condition that require constant energy consumption. On this is on the lab side. However, also on the media side, or on the supplier side, we have a lot of products that need to be transported under strict conditions, which creates a significant carbon emission. And also, even though sometimes reducing single-use plastic is not always possible, we thought that we can have a bit of a say on how much we are approaching sustainability in our clinic, in particular in our lab. So we thought, how can we have a bit of our little grain of sand that we can add to this sustainability issue? So the next thing is that we started thinking a little bit on the boxes that we get of media, because every week on busy periods, every second week, we are getting delivered this, we all know, big white boxes that when you get them delivered at home at a package or something and they break down, and it's a headache to clean them up. So we were thinking, we're having these styrofoam boxes, and we thought about circular economy. How can we give these boxes that we just get and then we just throw them away? How can we get them a bit of a second use? So we started thinking on ways that we can reuse these boxes. So I've seen them used before, in general, for picnics. You know, when the good weather comes, people will take them home, and then they will take them for a weekend, and then they will have their cold drinks and enjoy a good day by the beach. However, in Norway, this is quite a bit of a narrow of a period of the year. I mean, minus 25 degrees winters. No one needs a picnic cooler, and that was a bit of a culture shock for me, because in the winter time, when you don't have space in the fridge or the freezer, you open the balcony, you put the things in the balcony. That's your second freezer. So this we found that we couldn't really bank on it when it comes to actually do something about it. So we started finding new ideas. One of them was to try to give them away. People will actually message us saying that they want it. On the other hand, since they were given away for free, people really didn't come and pick it up. So we just kept thinking, who could take these boxes instead of just throwing them away? And in one day, we're just sitting, and then we're just talking about who might be interested. And we just thought, what about not give them to fishermen? Norway has a big fishing industry, so pretty sure they will be really interested in having these boxes for free if they can just pick them up. So what ended up happening is that I reached out the Norwegian Seafood Council, and I gave them a call, and that was a fun, a very fun call, because the second the person picked up the phone, she had a bit of a broken English, I had a bit of a broken Norwegian, so I was trying to explain them why I was calling them for, and I just told them, "Hey, I'm reaching out to you from a fertility clinic," and the other person on the lady on the phone just answered to me, "Yeah, thank you. We our fish reproduce fine. We don't need your help." I'm like, "No, wait, please. I'm calling from a human reproduction IVF center," and then she was very confused. "Why are you calling me?" I'm like, "Yeah, we have an idea that we would like to share to you, and see if we can help each other when it comes to sustainability. We have a lot of styrofoam boxes that we want to give away." And the lady said, "Yeah, this sounds good. Can you please send me an email?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." I was really excited. And during that period, I was also talking with the Bitrolife group, the sustainability department, where Sabrina is part of it, and so she told me, "Please add me on copy so they can see that it's a serious inquiry." But I never heard back from them. I honestly think they thought I was pranking them. So I'm still waiting for the reply. But I think that it's not a way that we're going to find any solution, at least anytime soon. So the third idea that we had is to actually maybe go to the root, right, which is the supplier. So there we had some meetings with Sabrina and in general the sustainability team at Bitrolife Group, and we had a bit of a brainstorming when it comes to what can we do about these boxes, for example. So one of we propose that we can send them back, but of course this needs to have a sterilization and return shipping cost. It's quite impractical. So we have not this is not an American movie. Unfortunately, there is no happy ending. We haven't had any solution for this yet at the moment. We just trying to recycle the boxes as best as we can, and we are actually on talks with Bitrolife to try to figure out styrofoam alternatives, and we are very open to test them and implement them on pilot programs. So we are very open to try these different options. So this is a bit of how we ended up on the sustainability journey. Was just a bit of how can we give reuse of what we have, and then we started a bit of a journey on our own with small steps like we would do at home. We use products, we recycle the plastic on one side, non-recyclable on the other side, and we started implementing these small things in the clinic. And we felt that, okay, we're doing some things now, but is there something else we can do? So as Fran said, we earlier, we are scientists, we're embryologists, we like data, we like courses, we like knowledge. So we try to go into a learning journey. And we went online and we tried to figure out if we could find any sustainable course for sustainability in the lab. We did find one. However, it's more on the traditional lab rather than the IVF side. So there wasn't any standard green IVF lab. Perhaps I should say training or education modules. So it's really cool to see what Fran is doing, because I think that will open a lot of doors for this in the future. And what we did at the end of the day is that we could only focus on things that we can immediately take action ourselves in the lab. So among those things is engaging suppliers and try to push toward more sustainable solutions, and being mindful on what we do. So those are the two things at the moment that we have control over and that we had some impact on it. So I just want to share a little bit of the things that we have been doing in our lab. So to try to maximize this approach on sustainability. So we've done several things. The first one is trying to reduce the amount of deliveries, plastic, and waste. So the way we approach this, it's in a way to have the supplier on the call. What I'm trying to say with this is that when we are trying to order goods, we are not just ordering what we have, what we need. Sorry, what we're trying to do is we try to have an overview and overlap different batches that have different expiring dates, so we can have longer using longer use of the products with shorter expiring dates among the different batches that we have. So that was one thing. We did have we try to order on big batches so we can have less deliveries with more items on them. This is a little bit more complex when it comes to media, but that was something that we worked it out with what I just mentioned. What I think I will talk about it again in a bit. So what we did also in the lab is that we have a bit of a strong focus on sorting plastic and cardboard packaging for proper recycling. We have in the lab, we have a specific bin where all the plastic is thrown away. And then the cardboard, we have a specific facility where we throw away the cardboard. We also try to reduce the amount of labware we use per treatment. This is a bit more complicated, but we try to reduce. If we can use one dish instead of two, that's always the idea. If we can use two dishes instead of three, that's the goal that we're going to. On top of the what we do in the actively in the lab, we also implemented some automatizations, which I think it always helps create an easier workflow in general, because then you don't have to actively do anything to have an impact. So what we have done is that we have programmed our benches to operate at a control schedule instead of running 24/7. So we have them running from 1 hour before we are in the clinic to 1 hour after we are there. So that way, when we are not there, we don't need the benches to be working. We're saving energy there. Also, on the energy saving side, all the tablets that we're using in the lab, we have them to turn off automatically after the day is over, and they're off on the weekends as well. And also we try to keep the battery at 80%, that way expanding the 80% of charging, that way expanding the lifespan. And also, this is something quite simple, but I think it's also important to mention, which is lights off policy. When we are not there, when we're not using something, we turn it off. When it comes to water, we've also worked a little bit on how can we minimize our use of water. So we work with motion sensor faucets to reduce unnecessary water flow. And we are also with talks now currently with the hospital that we're working with to try to implement a system that detects leakages of water. So if the sink is broken or something happens, then we can have a system that automatically shuts off the water supply, preventing waste and damage if a leak occurs. This is what I was mentioning earlier. I think on the 4 points, I think it's also really important, and I think Sabrina will also talk about it in a bit. It's the role that suppliers have. At the end of the day, we are different units that we need to work together towards a common goal. So what we are trying to do, and we're talking with the Life group to implement, is trying to from our side, reduce the cost by grouping orders when we can. This is a little bit more challenging when it comes to media. However, when it comes to media, as I mentioned before, we try to adjust the orders based on the expiration dates. That means that when we are doing an order, even though this is a little bit of an added step, so when you're busy, it's a little bit more complex. Sometimes it's worth it to just take a couple minutes to give them a call, ask, hey, when is this expiring? The batch for this product, especially the ones that have shorter shelf life, like embryo glue or GXTL. When is the next batch expiring? If it's the same that we have, perhaps we don't need any more. But if it's expiring in a longer day, down the future, then maybe we can actually add one more bottle of that specific product, so we don't have to order a smaller order the next week, for example. That way, trying to implement a bit of a smarter workflow on top of the basic first in, first out principle, which I think it's quite basic. That this is quite done already, I would say. So I'm reaching the end, so we can hear about Sabrina's talk. I think it's going to be really exciting. So I just wanted to start wrapping up. What's next? What's in our plan? What are we going to do? Or what do we want to do? So our goal is, I think, to begin with, is quantifying our environmental footprint. We would like to track how much it's being used and have a small estimate of a carbon footprint per patient, which maybe in the future we can share with the patient, and we can also share how much was in the beginning and how much we're working with and how much we're becoming better. So starting to have a bit more numbers. We're also trying to keep working on areas that to look what things can be done and improved. And we are talking with Vitrolife with different ways to do the orders in a smarter ways. Maybe we don't need to call. We are also trying to see new styrofoam packages. Sorry, not new styrofoam, but as a substitute for styrofoam packages. So we are open to try new things and see if we can implement them. And I think in general with sustainability, there's nothing written. I think it's just all about staying open, have a mindset that we can learn from each other, and maybe have a bigger green sustainable team for IVF that we can learn from each other and work with amongst different clinics. So I would like to say that sustainability in IVF is complex, but it's not impossible. Some solutions are challenging, but I think always with all big challenges, if we break them down to small realistic steps, we can achieve bigger things. We are always happy to hear from different providers and different people that have new ideas to try to explore possibilities regarding the sustainability journeys, both ours and theirs. I think it's important to cross-pollinate each other and then learn as much as we can. I think it's important with any other endeavor that you do in life. The more people they are involved in the process, the more fun it is, and the more you are excited to do and learn about. At the end of the day, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, we work to ensure future generation. Let's also ensure that they inherit a better place. Thank you very much. This is our lovely team at Aleris, and I really appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sami, for a nice talk, and especially for providing very specific examples of actions that you have taken to make your laboratory practice more sustainable. That's really important, and I think this is what people are looking for that kind of guidance. And I was also happy to see that many of the things that you have implemented were things that were recommended in the IVF sustainability paper that we published last year in RBMO. It just gives me confidence and encourages the publication of this type of reviews, and tells me that they could be helpful in getting people to take action, no matter how small, and believe that these actions can make a difference. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned about ISO 14001. Can you tell us a little bit more, just briefly, what are the costs? What's the structure? Is this something that is done annually? Do they have to come in and inspect the laboratory and every year, just like other accreditation bodies, or how does it work?
Thank you, Mina. That's a great question. I would like to say that we do have the ISO 14001 accreditation, and we are not an individual clinic. We are part of a big conglomerate. We're part of the biggest private healthcare system in Scandinavia. So this is something that we do have our own sustainable department that is that they're working in trying to figure out, because it's very specific metrics in order for you to do have the ISO 14001. That was really interesting because I was talking with Sabrina about it in our one of our talks about sustainability, and she was quite impressed that Aleris had this this certification, And going back to your question, I don't know the specifics of the of how often they come and they do, but what I do know is that you need to commit for very specific metrics that you need to accomplish yearly. And we do have on the corporate level a very, very, very extensive and long sheet with all the carbon emissions and how much there has been reduced and how much there have been shifting, for example, on down to electrical vehicles and how much CO2 has been saved and how much kilowatts per hour have been saved yearly. So it is quite, there is a whole department for this, which I think that it makes our job in the clinic way easier, because if it's already coming from the top, then it's our job is just showing the interest to actually act on sustainability. We don't have to fight.
Excellent.
We just have to
Yeah.
act.
Right. No, that's very interesting, and again encouraging, because in your case it is coming from the top and it's effective, as you have demonstrated. Thank you again, and we'll get back to the rest of the questions during the Q&A session.
Thank you.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce Sabrina Ritossa Fernandez, who is the head of sustainability at the Vitrolife Group, where she leads the implementation of the company's sustainability strategy, ensuring alignment with global standards and driving impactful initiatives that integrate environmental and social responsibility into the organization's operations. With more than 10 years of experience in sustainability and environmental sustainability goals management, Sabrina has a strong background in sustainable finance, having held key roles in global investment organizations. Her talk is very kindly sponsored by the Vitrolife Group, and we look forward to your talk, Sabrina. Please.
Thank you, Mina, and thank you, Dr. Cohen, as well. And thanks to i3 and my fellow speakers. I'm really excited to hear all of this, and I'm especially excited to hear that we have a lot to do and that as Vitrolife, we can be and we should be part of the solution. And so today, the idea is really to take you with me and open the behind the scenes, as Fran was saying, into what we're doing, how we're working, what is the journey here, and how we can keep working together. And so just as an introduction, I understand that most of you know who the Vitrolife Group is. For those who don't, very quickly, we are a global company focused on reproductive health. We have a very strong mission around supporting clinics improve patients' outcomes. And we're also a company which have very strong values. And why I'm mentioning the values here? Because these values are really the foundation of then our sustainability commitment. So for instance, if we look at them, when we think about integrity, integrity is about doing the right thing. And it's never been more important than today to think about doing the right thing, regardless of what the trends are or what the politics could be, for instance. Quality, and quality, I want to mention it together with innovation, because of course it's about patients' outcomes, first of all, but it's about innovation as well for innovation for patient outcomes. And sometimes you will find that the two can go together, but may mean that we need to go a little bit slower. For instance, when it comes to environmental innovation, if we want to ensure the best quality for our patients. And then collaboration, and collaboration is really what we're doing here as well. So it's about internal collaboration, but also collaboration with you, collaboration with the ecosystem, and there's nothing we can achieve just alone, right? We need to work together, and this is why this webinar and these meetings are so important. And just moving forward, we have also a very strong purpose around ensuring and enabling that people can fulfill the dream of having a healthy baby, and we do realize this by trying to make sure that we keep innovating and providing services and products with a high level of quality throughout the fertility journey of our patients. So this is just about Vitrolife very quickly. And what about us? So as Mina introduced me, I will now talk more about myself, but I'm not alone. I'm not doing all of this alone. I'm the head of the team, and I have two amazing colleagues working with me at Vitrolife. We have Tanya from Spain, that is our sustainability controller, helping us with data and with improving our environmental performance. And we have Camila working as our environmental health and safety specialist, making sure our operations are up to the highest standards. And this is how we approach sustainability as a team. But of course, the team, I always say, have the biggest team in the Vitrolife group. We are 1,100 people working on sustainability, because this is really something that is so important for us. I believe it should be important for everyone, of course, but as a company working in fertility and helping people, putting future generations into this world, as has already been said, we just cannot ignore it. And so Fran already mentioned the definition. I will not repeat it, but I just want to highlight how evergreen this definition is and how this transcends any politics, any belief. It's just about making sure that we can thrive as a species, us and the future generation, both having a sound planet to live on, but also socially and economically. And so with this in mind, we have developed a sustainability strategy at the Vitrolife Group that not only addresses our environmental impacts, but it's a 360-degree strategy to address all of the impacts really that we have on our stakeholders, on the people we work with, on the patients we serve, and so on. And so I will just quickly mention that before we move on to the environment. And the first pillar of our sustainability strategy is making sure that we grow and we develop our business according to our purpose, meaning we never forget why we're here in the first place, which is for our patients. Then we have the ethical part, which is about ensuring we uphold the highest principles throughout the value chain. And here we have a special attention as to how we work with suppliers, because suppliers in the end are part of our business, are part of the products we sell, and we need to make sure that they are upholding the same standards that we put for ourselves. And this is the same for you as a clinic, right? You need to make sure that your suppliers, which we are a part of, also meet your principles and your values. We have the planet part, which is the focus of today, and then we also are focused on being a responsible employer, supporting our people, supporting their health, their well-being, their engagement, and make them feel included and fostering diversity. And on diversity, I just want to have a little proud moment here, because this year we achieved full parity across all levels of management, from executive management to workforce. And we also received a recognition from being the #1 in the Nordic Diversity Index when it comes to diversity. So this is also a really big focus for us. But today, we're speaking environment here. And so when it comes to our environmental impact, where do we start? I think I've seen a comment in the chat about this. So where do we start? Well, the first step is really to understand where our impacts lie and what is our footprint. And when we talk environment, we need to talk CO2 emissions. And so when we look at our footprint at Vitrolife, of course, we're a healthcare company. We're not an oil and gas company or a car company, but we do have quite a significant footprint. So we try to calculate it, and it's the equivalent, all of the Vitrolife Group activities are equivalent to 2,700 households, not people, households, in the United States in 1 year. So, to the electricity consumption of 2,700 households. That's a small village. So we do have quite a significant footprint. And when we look at where does this footprint come from, we can see it here. We divided it by scopes. So scope 1 and 2 is direct on operations, and scope 3 is what we buy. And this is really the biggest part of our emissions, is what is indirect, is what we are buying. And you see here sort of the classification, and the #1 CO2 emission hotspot that we have is transport. And here we will talk about how we can work together to reduce this. So transport is #1. #2, of course, is the materials we produce. And here, 40% of the materials we produce is plastic. So and this is why, Sami talked about it. plastics is quite an issue in our industry. But also, I don't know if you would think about this, but 30% of the CO2 footprint from the products we purchase is chemicals, because chemicals have a high sort of CO2 intensity because of the way they are produced. So, and then of course, again, sort of traveling in another way, which is business travel, and as well employee commuting, and then we go downward from there. And so this is very interesting and very important because it makes us understand where do we need to reduce, where do we need to work in priority. And if we look at, we started this journey, so to say, 3 years ago, but really with the emission reduction target 1 year ago, and we already reduced our emissions quite significantly. 5% in absolute terms, but 8% when we look at the intensity, meaning versus the sales and the revenues and the products we sold, because we keep growing as a company, selling more products, but our emissions are decreasing. But this is not just sort of lip service here. We wanted to make sure that this commitment to reduce our emissions was grounded in science and was also sort of certified by a third party. And this is why we committed to the Science Based Target Initiative, which is one of the biggest initiatives, sort of collective initiatives from corporations to reduce their emissions. And what does this mean? This means that we've been audited by the Science Based Target that makes sure that our baseline against which we want to reduce our emissions is solid, that we calculated it correctly, that we didn't cheat. And then they tell us that to be in line with the 1.5 degree scenario, we need to reduce our emissions of the amounts you see here. And this is the journey we're on, and we will need to report our progress every year. And we will hold our executives accountable as well through incentive programs on the progress on this agenda. And now to give you more practical tips or a more practical overview of how we are actually working on our decarbonization journey, but also in general, how we are addressing the environmental impact of our operations, you can look at 4 focus areas. And the first one is, of course, transport and logistics. As I said, this is the #1 CO2 guilty category. And so there are actions that we can take. So one quick one, an easy one that we found quite easy, was that whenever we had the chance for local deliveries, we would prioritize low carbon transport. Another one that we can do together is to prioritize standing orders, of course, being more efficient, more mindful. And a project that I'm very glad that we kicked off last year is the Air to Road project, because we've had a lot of shipments that go through air. But when you ship from air to road, there is a very significant decrease in emissions. And to testify this, we've started a pilot in the Benelux region, and we try to decrease air travel, air shipping as much as we could. And we've seen a decrease in emissions of 81%. And this helped us overall, this approach, this mindfulness, and these projects help us to reduce our emissions from global transport and logistics in 2024 by 9%. So, you know, if we set our minds to it, we can do it, and we can do it together. And in the Benelux, for instance, customers were very helpful, you know, to collaborate, to accept this program that we started, and it's been quite successful. And now we want to extend it whenever we can. Of course, we cannot ship everything by road everywhere, but whenever we can, we're trying to prioritize that. Then we have our operations, our sites. So here there is a wealth of things I could say, of course, because we have quite big manufacturing sites. We've talked about ISO 14001. This is something very important for us that we have at our key site in Gothenburg, and we're likely going to extend. I'll try to answer to the question from Mina. This is an audit that we undergo every year. There is a stronger audit every 3rd year and a lighter audit every year. And they really go through, they really check all your environmental strategy, how you're working to the minimum details. There's also the importance of equipment that I wanted to highlight here, because energy efficient equipment, lights, all of that, that really helps. And that really helps us to keep the highest standard of environmental efficiency throughout. And then I've put a number here, which is around water, because As you know, one of our star products is media, so we do consume significant amount of water to produce media, and so we've been really focused on reducing the water use intensity through great equipment updates and maintenance. And then something else that we're focused on is ensuring that the energy that we get is carbon free. And today we're at 38%. Of course, I'm not happy with this number. It should be more. So we are increasing it every year until we're going to get to 100%. So we will have for sure improvements every year. But this is important to mention that we need to make sure that the energy that we source, it's carbon free as well, if we want to decarbonize our operations. And then this is something that you see in your day-to-day life, right? So our products, how sustainable they are. Sustainability by design is something that we started fairly recently. So, it will take some time until we're able to review all of our products. But here, with this graph, I wanted to highlight how sometimes it's complex to evaluate which product is actually more sustainable. So when we do an environmental assessment here, we not only look at the carbon footprint, but we also need to look at the chemicals and the hazardous substances in this product. We need to look at the material that is used to produce this product, how sustainable the material is. Is it a recycled material, for example? But then also we need to look how this material will be disposed. So there are a lot of moving parts that we need to analyze, and sometimes it's really not easy to sort of come up to a conclusion of what is better and what is worse. And this is a real life example from a needle pouch that we have developed. In the end, we prioritized the circularity of it and the fact that it could be recyclable. But as you see, it meant a little bit higher carbon footprint for us. So it's interesting that sometimes, we talk about sustainability and so on. When you go into the details, it can be more complex than it seems. And then circularity. So circularity, it's really important. It's really important for you. I know this is something that is we started to hear a lot about from clinics. So of course, the first thing is to reduce, right? Reduce materials as much as we can. Being mindful of the materials we buy, try to do more with less. Someone mentioned, I believe it was in Fran's presentation, QR codes. We were able to do it for a part of our products, namely for our tests. We were able to move from paper to QR codes. So it's a journey. We also need to square that with quality, with regulations and so on. But we are on this journey of reducing and then prioritizing recyclable packaging when possible. Sort of making sure that the packages that we give you can be recycled by design. And then thinking of this for the EPS boxes, the one that Sami was talking about, the infamous one, I would say, styrofoam boxes. It is a complex issue because we started looking into it and we are evaluating currently cardboard alternatives. But when you look at those, at least the ones that we have received so far, it seems that they need heavier cool packs to keep the temperature, the level that we need it. And so you will have more CO2 emissions from transport and logistics if you increase the weight of the box, right? So it's not an easy assessment to understand what would be the most sustainable EPS boxes out there. And so we're having a partnership with Chalmers University in Sweden to really study this and understand what would be the most sustainable box we can ship out to you. And we're working on this, and we hope in the next couple of years, we're going to be able, hopefully next year, but I don't want to overpromise, and we're going to be able to come to a conclusion as to what is the best way to ship, keeping quality. That's, of course, we cannot compromise on that. And then we also have some pilots here, lots of innovations. We're really trying a lot of things. We also have a partnership, a trial in the UK with some partner clinics, trying to provide them a solution so that they can recycle the packaging that cannot go into sort of the public waste system. And in order to guide these partner clinics, we've also developed guidelines as to which products that we have can be recycled in the European Union, in the traditional systems, and which ones are likely not recyclable because, for example, they may have two different materials tied together. And this is also very useful for us as a roadmap to understand where do we need to start working on the packaging, so that, of course, the objective should be that everything is green and everything eventually in the future is very easily recyclable. And in this document, we also share tips and sort of some tips as to how we can work together to reduce our joint environmental impact, because let's not forget that our impact is also the impact of the clinic and ultimately of the patient, as Sami was saying, or the operation that is being performed. We enter the equation. So how can we work together to reduce our joint impact? And this is where I end my presentation. Of course, I'm sure there's many more ways, but those that we have identified so far is order planning, as we said, transport and logistics, biggest source of emission for us. So if we can do that in a more rational way, that would be a big win. We would see an impact in our emission reductions. Working together, I love that Sami, went as far as to calling the fishing agencies. We support all those efforts. Of course, we serve 125 markets, so it's difficult for us to centralize those efforts, but we're willing to support, by giving the specification of our products or centralizing efforts at a country level if someone has an initiative like that. And then minimize replacements of media especially, but in general, sort of try to scrap the list as possible, and try to have a good communication among us so that we reduce waste to zero. And so this is really some actions that we can take right here, right now. But in the future, I hope that this is just the start for us to keep working together, to keep informing ourselves. I learned a lot from Fran's presentation and Sami one, and it's given me some ideas of how we can keep working together. And I hope we are giving you some ideas as well as Vitrolife, and we can keep collaborating together. We have little informal groups. As I said, we have some pilots in the UK, and with this group of very green champion clinics, we meet to share ideas, to share concerns. They share feedback to us. This is really important. And this webinar, I'm delighted, and I thank again I3. I think this is really great to make the point and to keep seeing really how we go from there. For me, this is just the starting point of the journey, is not the end, and we really need to make sure that we bring sustainability to the next level in IVF, to the benefit of the future generations that we're actually helping to put into this world. And so with this, I thank you a lot for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Sabrina. Wonderful presentation. I think it's clear from the questions that are coming in from the audience. We're learning a lot from all three of you, and yours is clearly so well informed because, well, you have been at this for about 10 years. And of course, that's a long time, well before most people gave this any thought. I mean, there's some striking numbers in your presentation. There's 70%, 40% from plastics, 30% from chemicals of responsibility that you see have an impact. But how are you going to reduce those? I mean, when I see your aims of reducing transportation, so are you going to look for local refineries? I don't know where your hub is for manufacturing. I assume it's Gothenburg. I mean, you're going to look for local refineries and local chemical production plants, and then get a collaboration. I mean, you know probably pretty well, and biologists are incredibly sensitive. If you even change one ingredient of a culture medium as a manufacturer, I mean, we're very sensitive to these things. We're immediately worried. We worry immediately. That's all it is. And it's only data that is convincing to us. And so, is that something you're considering? Going to get plastics locally? And
yeah, so as I said over again, quality is always number one for us. And if we are innovating sort of, when it comes to environment, we're being really cautious. So we can never sacrifice quality. So when it comes to travel and logistics, it's about shipping from us to the clinics. This is the biggest And so the idea here is really to to avoid air travel as much as possible. And also to sort of make it more efficient. Sometimes some shipments, they move across countries. And so we really need to make sure that we ship as direct as possible, or maybe, reinforcing our logistics, having local hubs. So this is a long-term plan, but we have it in our radar because we clearly need to be mindful of the emissions from our transport and logistics. And the air-to-road project shows that we already started this. We are on the right track. It's just with the Benelux region. It helped us to reduce our emissions 9%. And when it comes to chemicals, here, I mean, the quality and the formulation, of course, is we're not going to touch it at all. It's about us working with our suppliers to see how they can, because in the end of the day, the overall CO2 of the chemical that we use or of the plastic that we use, it's also depending on the performance of the supplier down, right? The materials they use and how they're working. So it's about us engaging with our suppliers so that the CO2 intensity of the products is reduced. But this is why these are long-term targets as well by 2030. So it's a 5-year project that we have. Yeah.
So all products have a shelf life, right? So are you looking into extending those as well? Because I think a lot of these shelf lives are artificially established. Looking what competitors do, looking at the industry in general, and then just putting a date on it on a package. But that would make a big difference if the shelf lives can be manipulated somehow, and the way how the products are stored in the clinics.
I cannot say much to this, but just repeating that, quality first. So we're never going to extend shelf life. It's a compromised quality. But of course, if one day there is a way to extend shelf life without compromising quality, of course we would.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. We'll see you back in the question and answers. Actually, that's what am I saying? It's starting right now. So I open so that everybody who has been giving a lecture and Anna and Mina is there already. We can start this session. Maybe Anna, if you open it up, that'd be great.
Sure. Yes, I just had a question to Fran in my mind. So, Professor Ruben Alvera, professor from Stanford University, is asking a question. So, congratulations on excellent work. Your survey among those in the lab mirrors what we find among physicians generally support incorporating sustainability, but not quite sure what to do and feel like they need more support and education. How would you approach improving these issues and breaking through to the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We do want to do better, and we're just stuck because we don't know how. So that's where just talks like this to get people together and discussing it. Research papers, our BMO were great to have our paper, but we just need other people to really research into this area so that we can back up our thoughts with the numbers, and then I hope that people will transition into being more green. Yeah.
Thank you. Mina, do you have a question?
Yeah, so there are a lot of good questions. Bronte is asking, at least one group in Australia is using disposable plastics to produce very desirable dining plates and dishes. Anyone else trying? So that's interesting. I have to look that up. Do you guys know of anyone who's using disposed plastics for this purpose?
Sabrina, where are our Vitrolife plastics go? They're making fence posts, right? Not quite dining cutlery, but something different.
Sorry?
The plastics that we're recycling with Vitrolife, they're making fence posts?
Can you repeat the word? Sorry.
Fence posts?
Where
they're being redesigned into something, aren't they?
Ah, right. Yes, they work with local recycling facilities, and you can make benches, for example. Is that what you were saying, right?
Yeah, so not quite dining cutlery, or plates.
Yeah.
But we've got something similar.
Yeah, so benches, they've made playgrounds out of it as well. You know, like the soft landing for the playground. So they can make several things, depending on the material, right?
That's cool.
But how do the plastics come back to you? From a clinic, what do we do? Send them back to Sweden? I mean, how do we do this?
No, we work with so we have a pilot right now in the UK with a company named TerraCycle, and they take care of recycling the plastics that cannot be recycled to the traditional system because, for example, we have some packaging at Vitrolife that is not mono material. It has two different materials attached. And we know that the public system doesn't recycle this because they're not going to have someone separating the different layers, right? And so we need to pay something extra so that this company takes it, separates it, and then recycles it the traditional way. This is one thing. But then when you provide them with higher quality plastics, they actually do make something, something different, like we were saying, benches or playgrounds or things like that. So depending on the program, depending on the plastic, and so on. But it's a way for us to make sure that everything that can be recycled is recycled. Because we've done a study, we checked some studies and so on, and we've seen that, for example, in the UK, it was in the low single digits what in the end really gets recycled. So, depending on, again, they have differences across regions and so on, but so we thought it was really important that we only put into the public recycling what is easy to recycle for them, and then we go through another route for the things that we know that are likely not going to be recycled.
Thank you. Sami, a question for you from the audience. How did you control your LAF benches to automatically turn off and on? Is this a built-in feature, or did you use a timer?
Yeah,
how did you do it?
that's I mean, our clinic, it's fairly new. It's we've been there for 1.5 years, almost 2 years now in June. And I mean, when you're a new clinic, you have newer equipment. So this newer equipment, they have inherently already built this feature. So it was cool to see that we could implement them. In the beginning, we didn't even see them, and they were like fidgeting through the menus. We're like, oh, there is different echo modes. So there's like, okay, we can do. Is there something else we can do? And then we went into the tablets, and then we're like, okay, let's put them on 80% to try to have them running for way longer time to avoid the batteries bloating. And yeah, I mean, that's the advantages when you're in a newer clinic. I think you have newer equipment, and newer equipment usually already has this features.
Yeah, but you could, of course, retrofit with timers,
Yeah, for
electrical
sure.
timers, heavy-duty electrical timers.
Yeah, and I think you can even put like smart outlets, and then from those smart outlets, you can even have apps where you can monitor them off-site even, so you can have them right. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
that was a
I
good
have
question.
I have a general question for everybody. Do you think we can get to a point where we can convince accreditation bodies to add sustainability, environmental responsibility to their standards, to the list of things you have to do to become accredited, rather than having a separate, green accreditation, which my green lab does, and of course ISO does. But why not make it a part of the accreditation process and develop a set of standards that sort of minimum standards that everybody can hope to achieve? Do you think we'll get there, and how?
I hope so. Like the HFEA for us in the UK control everything and they inspect everything. And I don't think it would be much to ask to have a little subsection of at least showing interest in green, like you're doing something, because the NHS in the UK have to have green plans. That was part of the sustainable changes. So I think for some clinics, they'll already have it if they are NHS linked. The private clinics aren't forced to, but if our governing body says, hey, look, you've got to do something, at least have a plan for it. I don't think it's much to ask for in the inspections. And I think it's a good example where you can get the whole country kind of on board with it to some degree. But other countries may be not so heavily regulated, so they may not get such a push. But I don't know what it's like in Norway. Do you have a strong regulation?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting question. And I think that usually when you need to implement something, you have two routes: either sanctions or you provide something in exchange. I think when you provide something in exchange in form of whatever tax breaks or something, usually puts people more on board. So I think on a higher level, usually, you know, where the money is, that's where laws and things are being changed. So I think in Norway, in this case, it's very indented in society's sustainability. I think, as I mentioned, like if you come to Oslo, it's, as I mentioned before, like 90% plus of public transport is electric. 80% of cars being sold are electric. There is huge tax breaks for electric cars. So actually, Norway is one of the most expensive countries in the world. But I think getting an electric car, it's way cheaper than pretty much other countries in Europe. So I think this is the difference. I think there it's where you can, if you make it accessible, people will implement it. And on the other end, I think you need to, I will say this word, you need to make it sexy. You know, you need to make sustainability sexy to get people on board. Otherwise, you know, if it's a tedious thing, you know, as Sabrina said, you need to take things and separate them, and it's a tedious
Extra work,
job.
it's not that fun.
I'm sure Sabrina has a full day of work. I'm sure you, Fran, have a full day of work, and you know you do it because you like it, and you have a group of people around you that encourages you as well to do a bigger impact. So I think these are the things that are important to keep in mind, is that we're a community and incentives work. So I think that's my take on it. I would say, what do you think, Sabrina?
Well, from a sustainability perspective, we have quite a few regulations in Europe now for bigger companies. And I think those really move the needle. When you put those, it really helps. And the way I would see for the accreditation bodies, it would make a lot of sense that, you know, to get accredited, you need to show some sort of sustainability plan, management system or commitment. And for example, you know, as we were talking about it, ISO 14001 could be an interoperable and a global standard that we could all follow to prove that that's commitment and that management. You know, also not to accumulate standards. You know, I'm in favor of standards, but I think we also need to make sure that we don't have 1,000 standards. This is for the environmental management, right? Then I think we're missing in IVF a forum, a more structured forum to sort of like My Green Lab, but the IVF version, where we can really learn from each other and provide perhaps some structured learning and some minimum steps that one can take to be a little bit greener in the IVF life. I think that could be a very interesting project to have an idea for the future.
Great.
Anna, did you have any burning questions?
Maybe one quick question. So from the audience, and I'll add my question to Sabrina as well. So how long does it take to implement a change to a product to be more sustainable, for example, packaging? And my question, so I remember when we were working on the article, I analyzed Vitrolife's sustainability reporting. And I remember there was notice that you're working on bioplastic or biodegradable plastic? If you could elaborate a little bit on it, if it's
it takes long. That's my answer. Why? Because first of all, again, I don't want to sound like a broken clock, but we have quality. We have my lovely colleagues at regulatory quality that they whenever we come with ideas, they love it, but they're always challenging us a lot, right? Because we need to make sure that we never ever sacrifice quality. And so when we are working with the supplier of Vitrolife, of course, it means it has been vetted, that the material is perfect for sterilization, for the temperature, for everything, right? And so to change something, we are on the road, we have this roadmap, we know where we need to work, but it just doesn't happen overnight. And you've seen for something so maybe simple, like the styrofoam box, when we started looking at it, actually we started a sustainability team. We thought we are independent, we can look into it ourselves, how hard can it be? Well, now we started looking into the alternatives. We were like, oh, this is really great, but cardboard is great, but then the cool packs are worse actually, or the sizes, or then the temperature, because we need to keep a certain temperature when it gets to our customer. And this means that we need to go slow here. If we're gonna make a change, it needs to be a long-term change, a change for the best solution. And this is why these changes take time. But and it's the same for bioplastics, right? Of course, we're looking into it. We've tested it on some packages, but before we actually get to the point we're comfortable with all of the requirements that we have from a quality and regulatory perspective, unfortunately, it takes some time. But better like this than sacrificing quality at any point.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we have been going now for 1 hour and 50 minutes. So it is unfortunately time to wrap up. I hope that this session has been as insightful and interesting for our audience as it has been for me personally, for us. I know I speak also on behalf of my co-moderators. I'd like to thank our speakers, Fran Farlie, Sami Obaya, and Sabrina Ritossa Fernandez for their excellent contributions, truly. And I'd like to once again acknowledge the Vitrolife group for sponsoring Sabrina's talk, and also express how grateful we are for the work that you are doing. It's serious, it's obvious, and if you have a 1,000 plus workforce, if I understood you correctly, Sabrina, this is serious work toward sustainability. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my co-moderators, Jacques and Anna, for an engaging and stimulating conversation. And I will pass the floor on to Anna.
Thank you, Mina, and not forgetting the team from I3, the organizing committee of this initiative, who are Jacques Cohen again, Peter Nagy, Marianne Sebaites, Thomas Elliott, Fran Farlie, Violetta Stora, and Giles Palmer. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anna. Last few words for me. Please join us next week for the next I3 session on April the 1st, next week, Tuesday. Please join I3 with another RBM Online, IVF Online live session moderated by Dr. Richard Anderson and Dr. Laura Rienzi on the topic of fertility preservation, which I know is something that's high on the list of favorites. So we'll see you next week. And again, thank you, everybody, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.